Hey guys, George at SoundTraxx here, and today we're going to review a little bit, and we're going to talk about setting the chuff rate and how it works on the Tsunami2 and the Econami. Now first off, we've just installed our TSU 4400 into this Atlas 060 engine, just in time for the Chicago O-Scale meet. Now one of the first things we need to do is we need to set it up and get it ready to go so we can demonstrate it. Now one of the first things we'll need to do is to actually set up the chuff rate. So first let me talk a little bit about how the chuff rate works and why it works the way it does, and then we'll set it up. Now first off, with the original Tsunami and previous sound decoders that we've built in the past, in order to get an accurate timing with the locomotive's motion of the drivers, we always had to install a physical cam. And this is a wire that is physically attached to the locomotive that actually watches the rotations of the wheels and grounds basically to one rail or the other. This creates an internal pulse of power, which then triggers the decoder to create a chuff sound. Now this was very easy to implement, but a little bit difficult to install because of course you had to remove the drivers, you had to install a cam on the back of it or onto the axle, and you're halfway disassembling your locomotive, and it wasn't very friendly. So with the Econami and the Tsunami2, we've actually developed a way that the decoder can watch the rotations of the motor and make sure that that chuff sound is in sync with that the entire time. Now as the motor is turning, each of the back EMF signals is slightly unique, and our decoder is able to sense that. So it's able to determine when a motor creates a full rotation. So basically when you're setting the chuff rate, you're telling the decoder that say 1.3 turns of the motor is going to create a chuff. And by doing that, you're actually calculating the driver diameter and the gear ratio for the decoder so that that way it knows X number of rotations of the motor to create a chuff sound. Now the chuff rate is stored in CV114, and so by simply making a CV adjustment, you can match that up to whatever locomotive you've installed it into. So we're going to go ahead and take this Atlas 060, and we're also going to do this with our Blackstone models K27, and we're going to go ahead and set the chuff rates to make sure that we get it dialed in. So let's get started. Okay, so to set the chuff rate, we're going to go ahead and move our locomotive forward at about speed step 4 or 5, just enough so we can actually see the rotations of the motor. And we watch and count the rotations and count the chuffs in comparison. Well, in this case, we're getting about 5.5 chuffs per revolution, so that means we're going a little too fast. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and change CV114. Now the default value is 57, and so therefore higher numbers translate to a faster chuff rate and lower numbers translate to a slower. So because we're getting too many, that means it's too fast of a chuff rate. So we're going to go ahead and drop this down, but we're going to go a little bit big here. So we're going to drop it down to a value of 40. Now let's go ahead and run our locomotive reverse, again speed step 5. Now I'm not quite getting 4 chuffs per revolution there. I'm still getting a little bit less. So from our value of 40, we probably need to increase the speed a little bit. So let's go ahead and we're going to set, in this case, CV114. We'll set it to a value of 45 and see how it does. So we'll move it forward. That's pretty close, but it's still off by just a hair. So let's go ahead and increase the speed a little bit and see how this works. So we're going to go ahead and now we're going to set CV114 to a value of 50, and let's just see how it does. It's pretty close, but I still think we can slow it down a little bit and dial it in. So because 45 was too slow, 50 is too fast, let's try somewhere in the middle. So let's set CV114 to a value of 47. Now we're going to move forward again, speed step 5. And that actually looks pretty good dialed in right there. We'll check in reverse. So I think we've picked our values. So in this case, CV114 equals a value of 47. Now to kind of show you, again, we haven't changed any cam. There's no cam on this locomotive. And just to show you, we're going to go ahead and move our locomotive forward at speed step 5. And what happens when we stop the wheels, the chuffs goes away. And you can actually hear and see how the locomotive is, or how the decoder is keeping the chuffs in time with the locomotive rotation of the wheels. Now, again, this is watching the back EMF, so you can adjust this. Now, let's go ahead and set up our K27. So now we're going to go ahead and do the same thing here, but we're going to use our K27. So let's go ahead and set it going. Actually, taking that out of the package, it's actually pretty close on. So it doesn't look like we'll have to do much to it. So let's go ahead and try to speed it up here really quickly and see how this works. So we're going to take CV114 and let's set it, it was defaulted at 57, so let's try a value of 60. Looks just a little bit fast. So we're going to go ahead and reduce this back down. Now remember, our value was 57. It was a little slow. We increased it to 60. It's a little fast. So let's try a value of 58. Now that looks pretty dead on right there. So just in a few seconds, we've made sure again to check the chuff rate to match the locomotive. So we'll go ahead and increase it just a little bit here, and we're going to stop the wheels and again show you that when the wheels stop, there's no chuffing. And the decoder is simply watching the rotations of the motor. So even with some pressure, if the locomotive was working harder, say to pull a train up a grade or anything like that, the chuff is still going to match, again, the rotations of the wheel. So now that we've played and we've set the chuff on both of these locomotives, you can see how easy it is. The good news is with our Tsunami2, you can adjust the CV till your heart's content. So even if you go back and decide you need to reset the decoder and you don't remember what was in CV114, you can go in and set it again, this time matching the locomotive again, just with this same procedure. Doesn't take very long and you're going to get very accurate results with the Tsunami2.